Good morning. Hi, so today is kind of like a all over the place video. I had a really big week for school last week and I didn't have time to film too much, and so this week I figured I'd do kind of like a basics video and I'd show you guys how I make my soil mixture that I use to pot all my houseplants. It's not the most scientific thing in the world, but it's what I use and it seems to be working, so yeah, I thought I'd show you how to do that. And then on top of that, I wanted to do an idea that was given to me by one of my friends, shout out Josie, best plants to get for a beginner. So I thought I'd walk through that today. My hair's wet. I just showered. Promise it's not oil, but even if it was, who cares? So I set up a little backup growing station in my bathroom, which I don't know if you guys have seen yet. It's kind of ugly with the cords right now. I have my big mix of Exotica, Silver Splash, but here I have kind of my backup setup. So I was getting kind of annoyed because in my setup in my living room, it wasn't as pretty as I'd like it to be, just because I had to keep some of my weirder project plants in with the plants I was really excited about. Aesthetically, I wanted to move the less exciting plants somewhere else where I could focus on them separately than my higher care needs plants. And so here I kind of have a mix of things I'm working on. Here are some of my golden pothos cuttings that I'm gonna eventually probably pot up, sell for like a few bucks on Facebook Marketplace, just to earn some extra cash so I can buy new plants. The aloe I brought home from Arizona. That cactus back there, I think it's just called the pencil cactus, but I just wanted to give it a bit more sun here. It was in a north facing window before, which it was growing, but I don't think it was thriving. It's also hard to tell when this guy's thriving. My boogie I have in here, this is a pretty new plant that I'm excited about, but I just wanted to see how it would like some more light, and I didn't have room for it with my other light. My mycans cutting from my boyfriend is doing okay, but I think it needs some more indirect light, so I might shuffle that around. In these little pockets I have my burro's tail that I totally killed, but am trying to propagate from what was remaining. And then yeah, some various other things, a lot of avocados. Oh, I can give you a tour of my little propagation boxes. I finally took apart my wandering dude plant because it was just not loving it. All my sad failed alocasias and begonias. Oh, and the saddest story of all. So I took a cutting of my mom's ZZ plant and put it in water. Oops. I'll fix that later. And it grew these wonderful long roots, and then when I tried to take it out of the jar that it was in, the bulb that it had just grown popped off. And so it was all for nothing. How do I pause? Okay, so I set up my tripod finally. Let's see, in our first little I just use old containers to be these little grow boxes. So in this one I have a little Pilea peperomoides. I don't know how well this will do. Off while I was repotting one of my Pileas, and it was one of the little shoots that it was gonna send up to be a new baby, and it broke off, so I just decided I'd put it in here, see if anything happened. And then these are little bulbs that had come off one of my alocasias that had root rot that I was cleaning off. Those were some bulbs, so I was just seeing if I could potentially save those. So that's in the little mozzarella one. Then in this one I have a peperomia hope leaf. I'm just seeing if it will do anything. These are kind of just all experiments to see what will happen. I have a string of heart little babies. I have a lipstick plant leaf that just fell off and was healthy, so I was just seeing if it would do anything. And I have a crinkle 8 leaf in here that also fell off during shipping, and so I just stuck it in here, see if it will do anything. So that's that for that box. And then in this final Tupperware, I just have some Crimson Princess that, again, I'm just experimenting with how to propagate these. One of them has a couple roots. I don't know if you can see, but down there has a few roots. We'll see how that goes. I just kind of make sure that the nodes that I think will be rooting are in the moist sphagnum moss. So here is my other plant grow light setup. I'll talk more about some of these plants in a coming up video of kind of a plant hauly video, but some of them I'm really excited about. This guy I need to pot up today. My begonia. And then getting some indirect light over here. I have a few plants. Another thing I'm working on is I'm gonna try, I didn't like that you could always see into my messy bench. So right now I'm just working on, it's obviously not done, but making a set of curtains to go there, and so that it's not unsightly. I moved my Monstera over here by this window. Also, it's getting a little bit more humidity from the humidifier. That will hopefully keep that moss pole a little wetter. So we'll see. But there's my little winter wonderland outside. I'm from Arizona, so this is still so weird for me, but really exciting. Let's see. Look how cute that tree is. All the red berries and the white snow. I love it. I'm plant sitting for a friend of mine, so we might be repotting her Monstera soon. Okay, hi. I'm barely in the frame, so I'm going to be leaning down. So I'm going to be making my soil mixture that I make each time, and warning, I don't give exact measurements of ingredients. I just kind of eyeball it. Let's get started. So I use this Sterilite little clamp closed box. I'm going to put on my gloves, even though sometimes they get obnoxious and bulky, and so I end up taking them off anyway. In general, for potting mix, I like to think just the lighter the soil, the better. Not only does it allow for more oxygen and air to get through the soil, but it also allows for roots to push through the soil easier, and we want to make it easy for them to create a really complex root network. And that also allows for better draining, which is really important, especially since I have had problems with root rot in the past. Not with this soil, but that's one of the reasons why I started making my own soil. Mixes at stores that I was purchasing just wasn't airy enough and didn't drain well enough, and so my roots were sitting in water for way too long. And I'm just going to clean this table afterwards. I'm gonna make a mess. It's just inevitable. So I actually have leftover potting mix from when I used to use just store-bought potting mix, and I use this for the base of my soil. So this contains peat moss, mainly peat moss, and compost, which are the two ingredients I need from it. It also has some additional perlite, which I'll be adding my own pumice, just to make it a little bit more, chunky. So I like to add worm castings for extra nutrients. Yeah, it's just worm poop. I think this is just really high in nitrogen and calcium. 1 part of worm castings to 5 parts the peat moss and other compost. I'm gonna mix that in a little bit before I add some of my chunkier ingredients. Next, I'm gonna add my pumice. It's just really porous rock. Really helps for aeration in the soil, quick drainage, which is what we need. So I'm gonna add a lot of this. So I have this just little plastic cup in here, and I just add it cup by cup. I could probably dump it, but it's just a little easier. And then just for fun, since I have a lot of like leca balls, which is just light expanded clay aggregate, add some just to add even more bigger chunks. I don't want to add too much of this. Actually, I'm not going to add them straight from the bag because I already have some cleaned ones. And when I say cleaned, I don't actually spend too much time on this. I just put them in a colander and run some water through just to get all that kind of clay dust out of there. I don't know how important that is, but I read from a lot of people that use leca for a lot of their plants and do semi-hydroponic that that's what you should do. Okay, here I have some leca that has already been washed. So I'm just going to add some of that and mix it in. Diversify your soil. Now I'm going to give you just a little close-up of the soil. So as you can see, it's really, really chunky. This is just what works for me. I also just don't have a lot of plants that like water retention. For right now, I like a really, really, really chunky, well-draining mix. That will just have to do. So, first plant that I think is great for beginners would be the Peperomia obtusifolia. I have several different varieties, which I'm going to show you guys. Here is my pride and glory Peperomia obtusifolia variegata. I've shown this one in videos before. I love it because I didn't give it the right care for about a year, and it still stayed alive. And now that I've been giving it the right care, it's just been like exploding with flower tendrils and very variegated leaves. Another variety that I have is the Peperomia obtusifolia red edge. I don't know if it will show up that great on camera, but each of the leaves has like a red, who would have guessed that, red edge. And yeah, it's similar in care. All of these are seated next to a southern window. Even though it's cold outside, they don't seem to be bothered by the cold glass yet. I also let these guys dry out literally completely till they're... This guy's so dry right now, and he's not even starting to get wrinkled yet on his leaves. So yeah, I let them dry out, then wait a couple more days, and then I give them a thorough watering and let them do it all over again. This guy is a Peperomia obtusifolia golden gate. The difference between the variegata and this one is that this one has variegation around its edges on each of them. I really like this plant because on this leaf you can see that it has the variegation, and then it has this darker kind of tortoise shell effect on the outside of that variegation. So I really like this guy. I just have him in a little pot that my grandmother gave me, actually. I think this guy fits in here really cute.
I'm dead. I'm gonna happen dead.
Just one of the kids. Another good beginner plant, and this is based on my experience, so if you've had bad experience with any of these plants, I'm sorry, but I haven't. This is my African violet, and this guy is really fun because the leaves are soft. It reminds me of lamb ears, and then they put out these great flowers. These flowers actually all came up on election day, and they're still there. And it's a couple weeks later now. But yeah, and it's constantly putting out this new fluffy growth, as you can see. in the middle here with these very cute flowers. And I just love it. I also especially love this plant because even plants that are known for their flowering, ever since I moved, I've been having trouble getting those plants to flower. So the fact that this one still flowers for me makes me really, really happy. Yeah, I love this plant, and it's very soft. Oh, it's so cute. So cute. Okay, now moving on to our pothos and philodendron varieties. I love trailing plants, and so a lot of these are going to be trailing plants. I just like them because they constantly have multiple points of new growth. Example of a philodendron Brazil. This is a variety of the heartleaf philodendron that I've talked about before. I think that's also a good beginner plant. I'll show an example of it later. But this one, its leaves are so interesting and different. Like, it really looks like there are several different varieties just within this pot, which only has 2 cuttings in it. So there's a lot of variety in the leaves. See, this one has a half moon. This one has just a really thin stripe down the center. This one has kind of pinkish variegation, actually, because I think it's a little sun stressed. It's in the window. This one has several different colors in the middle. I mean, there's just so much variety just in this tiny little pot of it. A larger example of this one is this hanging one that I have. Again, there's just so many different types of variegation within each pot. So this one has the thin stripe. Let's find a good example of. This one has a ton of different colors within it and a thicker band down the middle. I mean, it's just an amazing plant. And this one I really like because its leaves are so big. Like, yeah, I love this plant. And as I've talked about in other videos, they're really easy to propagate, which I think is really fun. When I started caring about plants, that was something that I like to do the most, which is just propagate, because I could see daily change, which was really exciting for me. Here, again, of course, I have to talk about my heartleaf philodendron, the non-variegated variety. So this is like philodendron hederaceum, or I've also heard cordatum. But if you know why you use one term over the other, let me know. But again, just look at these giant leaves. I saw at a nursery the other day, I saw one that was climbing. They trained it to climb up a moss pole, and the leaves were like that big, giant hearts. And I like this one because it has those really big leaves as well. Anyway, very pretty, very full. I'm very happy about it. Classic beginner plant, the golden pothos. Look at how beautiful that leaf is. These plants, they're called devil's ivy just because they never stop growing. This is another, oh, it's heavy. This is another super fun one to propagate just because it grows so fast. And you can make new plants out of other plants. That's the best part about plants. I actually just recently bought some coconut coir to line this fruit basket. That was like the heaviest thing I've ever lifted. This guy's next. This is my Marimo moss ball. They're literally just little aggregates of, it's not actual moss, it's algae. The only care I really do for this guy is I change his water like once every week, and honestly sometimes once every 2 weeks, just to make sure that there's fresh water in there. You can keep them in an open container. I've kept them in a closed. And then every once in a while you just kind of spin them around, allowing them to pick up more oxygen. And then since they like cold climates, if they start to look a little dull or not as bright green, you can pop them in the fridge for a few hours or even a day, and they brighten back up. My Monstera. And actually, just found out that what I have is not a Monstera deliciosa, which is what I've been calling it. I think what I have is a Monstera I need to look at it a little. Borzigiana. Okay, I was like kind of right. So on Monstera deliciosa, which I might put a picture in here, right where the stem meets the leaf, it has this like rippled effect. And on the Borzigiana, it's smooth. Some plant beginners might be intimidated by this plant since it's kind of like the poster child for the recent houseplant popularity surge in the past few years. However, this is just another philodendron variety like the others. They like to dry out between waterings. Make sure they're in well-draining soil, and they're actually fairly easy to take care of. They can tolerate low light, however, I think they like a brighter indirect light. This leaf isn't even fenestrated, but look how beautiful and glossy and big it is. And I actually, right next to me, have my big boy who's had his issues recently with thrips, so he'll be okay. He'll be okay. Just to reiterate, plants that I would recommend to a plant beginner are Peperomia obtusifolia, more common philodendron trailing plants such as the heartleaf philodendron and the Philodendron Brazil, as well as the golden pothos, which I'm not gonna even attempt to pick up because that thing is literally so heavy. Marimo moss balls, which are super cute and fun, and African violets, which I just can't get enough of those flowers. Thank you so much for watching. I know today's video is kind of all over the place, but hopefully it had some interesting or helpful information in it. So again, thanks. Subscribe if you want. Ooh, ah.